Hello, this is Kevin Trainer. Welcome to my tutorial on installing the MySQL server software, the MySQL Workbench software, and the files from the Murach MySQL second edition textbook on macOS. So I'm recording this in January of 2017, and I'm hoping this is going to have a life of at least a year. My last one did. And I have created separate tutorials for Windows 10 and for macOS. And this is the macOS one. All right. And it turns out that using these tools on macOS is a little bit challenging. There aren't as many users of these tools on this platform as on the Windows platform. And it seems like the people in the open source project really prioritize the changes to the Windows version over changes to the macOS version, which means that at any given time, if you just go out and install the latest of everything, the combination quite frequently does not work. And that was true when I recorded the last of the tutorials that I did for the Mac in the fall of 2015, and it's true today again. So what you're really looking for is you're looking for a combination of the versions of software that work together. The files from the Murach book are pretty much a constant. They'll work on any combination. So let's go and take a look at what I have here today. I'm working on a virtual machine that's macOS 10.12, and it started as the distribution for macOS Sierra, and then I downloaded and applied a couple of rounds of updates. So let's just look at the version that I have here. And it says I've got version 10.12.2. Okay, so if you have version 10.12.2 or one close to it, this combination that we're going to work on should work for you, just making the choices that I'm going to make. If you have a later version, well then, and this combination doesn't work for you, well, then you're going to have to do what I did, which is to start with the latest version of everything and then to back up until you find a combination that works together. And that's what we're doing here today. Okay, so we're working on macOS Sierra 10.12.2. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to download and install a copy of MySQL Server Community Edition. And when I practice this, I use the Firefox browser, so I'm going to use that again, just because I know it works. It probably works okay in this Safari browser too, but what the hey. Okay, and then let's go to the site from which we download MySQL software, which is dev.mysql.com. Okay, and what we have here, let's spread this out just a little bit. Okay. We have a link over on the left side for MySQL downloads, and that's usually a pretty good page. And now we have a list of the various products that we're able to download and install. And the first one on the list here is one that we want, MySQL Community Server. Okay. And then about the fifth thing on the list is MySQL Workbench. And we're not going to install that quite yet. We're going to come back for it later. Okay, so let's go back up and click on the link for MySQL Community Server. And as you come to the page, there's some documentation at the top. And then you're going to find the current generally available release for MySQL Community Server. And right now today it's 5.7.17. If you're doing this in even a few days from now, it might be a later version. Okay. It knows that we're on MacOS X, which is great. Now, unfortunately, this particular version had some problems when I tried to coordinate it with the versions of MySQL Workbench that were available. So we're not going to use the latest version. We're going to use a previous generally available release. So instead of taking one of the links on this page, we're going to go right over here on the right side, looking for previous GA versions, and we're going to click that. And the most recent version that it's going to offer us is version 5.6.35. And if we take the drop down, you can see that the other version is an even earlier version. But 5.6.35 works just fine. And then as we come down to the different downloads we can do, there are two choices. One is a compressed tar file, which is a zip archive. And the other one is a .dmg archive, which is your typical macOS installer, and that's what we want. So we want the second of the two, and we're going to give it a click on the download button. Okay. Now, at this point in the dialog, it usually will ask you to log into your MyOracle web account. And that's well and good. That's a nice thing to have because it's good to get updates about Oracle products. But I've had one of these accounts for a very long time, and I don't want to log into it right now. So I'm just going to take the link down at the bottom. No thanks. Just start my download. And you can see it's going to give me some options. These are the standard options you get with Firefox. Instead of opening the file, I want to save it. It's going to go into my downloads folder. Okay, and I'm going to click on OK. And I can see under Firefox here that the download's still in progress. You see a progress bar. I've got a pretty fast connection here, so it's not going to take too long. And here it looks like we're all done. Now I could go over here and go to the downloads and try to fan fold it and all that kind of stuff, but I don't want to do that. I'd rather open a Finder, get a new Finder window, and go to downloads and really see that file. Okay. Now with some of these older files, when you go to run them on the newer operating system, they complain that they're not properly identified as to the author. So if, for instance, you go to run this with a double click and it doesn't run, you can hold down the control button and give it a click, and you'll get into another dialog. So that's what I'm going to do here just to show you this. I'm holding on control. I give it a left click, and then I click on open. And it just plain old opened. If it had a problem with the identification of the author, it would have asked us if that was okay. And of course, we would have said, yes, it's okay. Okay, so this just ran the normal way, so it would have opened had I simply double clicked it. In fact, let me illustrate that. Let me close that and then just go double click on that file, and it's going to open up a link to the installer, and double click on that. Okay, and it's opened up the installer. So I'm going to click on continue, and then continue again. Then I have to agree to the license, and then I'm going to click on install. And it wants me to give it the password for my operating system, so it will do the install. And I'm going to type that in here and click on install software. And it runs pretty quick. Well, at least on my machine it does. I've got a pretty fast Mac. And that looks good, and we're going to close it. And it asks if I want to keep the installer file, and what the heck, I've already got the thing installed. I'll say, okay, move to trash. This is one of the new options you get on macOS Sierra. Okay, so how do I know that the MySQL community server is really installed? Well, on the Mac, the way that you find out is you go up to your toolbar for your whole Mac, left click on the apple, you get the drop down, and take the second line, System Preferences, and now you're going to see down on the last line, you may or may not have Java installed, but you should have MySQL installed. So if I click on that, it should open up the controller for the server. So it's currently stopped, right? So we can click on the button and say Start MySQL Server. And this is the place to do it on the Mac. We'll see later that there is a place on the MySQL Workbench client product where you can start and stop the server, but in this particular configuration, I don't think it works. So starting and stopping that you're going to do is going to be done here in System Preferences. And again, they're looking for my plain old Mac password, not any kind of password associated with the server. And now it's running. So very good. Okay. It says to automatically start MySQL Server on startup, and the last configuration that I used, the one that I set up back in the fall of 2015, even if I checked that, it would not work, and now it seems to work okay. Okay, so I would recommend that you check it, so then you don't have to start your server every time you want to use MySQL. Okay. If you want to uncheck it, and so you'll have to manually come here to start and stop your server, well, that's up to you. Okay, but I'm kind of liking it just as I have it here. Okay, so the server's installed just fine. All right, now we're going to come to the second part. We're going to download MySQL Workbench. And let's go find that. So let's go to, again, it's probably easiest just to go from the top. Go to dev.mysql.com. That'll give you the top. And then pick the link for MySQL downloads. And this MySQL Community Downloads is for the Community Edition, the free version of MySQL, which is just what you want. Okay? And if we go down here a bit, we've got MySQL Workbench, and that's what we want. So let's take that link. And again, we're going to go to the download page, and we have different documentation things at the top. We're not going to worry about them right now. And then down towards the bottom of the page, you can see that the current generally available GA release is MySQL Workbench 6.3.8. Now that's today when I'm doing this tutorial video. Even tomorrow, it could be 6.4.1 for all we know. Okay, so these things change. Okay, if you don't want the currently offered one, if you're trying to match the versions that I'm installing here in the tutorial, then you don't want to use this one. I tried it. I couldn't get it to work reliably. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the same kind of thing that we did when we loaded the server. We're going to go over to the right, click on the link for looking for previous GA versions. Okay, and here we come to another page that's formatted the same way. And the version, the next oldest version is 6.2.5. And I'm pleased to announce that I've been able to get that to work pretty well. There are older versions. 6.1.7. I tried that too. It didn't work appreciably better than 6.2.5, and it didn't have the features that had come along in 6.2. So you definitely want 6.2.5 or more recent. Okay, and then there's only one kind of file to download. That's the DMG archive. That's the regular Mac installer. So let's click on download. And again, it's going to give us a chance to log in, but I don't want to. Let's just click on no thanks, just start my download. And by default, since we chose we wanted to save the file last time, that's what it wants to do. I'm going to say OK. And if I go down and look down in the dock, there was a little progress bar under the Firefox icon, but that's already resolved. So let's open a new Finder, and let's go to Downloads, and here's the Workbench file. So I forget whether this one will just open or not. I'm suspecting not, but let's just give it the double click. Sorry, the double click here. And that seems to want to work. Okay, so that's fine. We don't have to worry about any fancy clicking. That's good to see. All right, and here's the install. And like a lot of Mac installs, you take the object on the left and then you click on it and pull it over and you drop it on the object on the right, which is a proxy for the applications folder. Okay. Now, if you've done a number of Mac installs, that probably looks familiar to you. If you haven't done a lot of them, it might look a little odd, but that's the way we do a lot of these installs. Okay, so we can close this installer. All right, and how are we going to open it? Well, we're going to open it in Applications. So this is an application program that you need to open every time you want to use it. And unless we create some kind of icon for it, either on the desktop or in the dock, we're going to have to go to the applications folder to run it every time that we run it. So we're not going to do that. We're going to create an icon in the dock in a minute. Okay, so let's we go to Applications. We find MySQL Workbench. We're going to give out a double click to start it. Okay, now here's where we get the problem that it doesn't want to start it on the double click because it's from an unidentified developer. Okay, so click on OK to clear that. Okay, once you get that problem, you can solve it by holding down Control and giving that file a single click, and then from the drop down choosing Open. And it's telling us it's from an unidentified developer, but we're pretty confident with it because we got it from the MySQL site. So we're going to say, OK, open it. And you're going to see the Workbench client open. And you can also see it down in the dock. And before we forget it, let's go down to the dock. Right click on the Workbench icon with the it's the blue icon with the white line drawing dolphin on it, and then let's go up to Options and choose Keep in Dock. And I always like to go back and make sure that took. Yeah, Keep in Dock. That's pretty well set. Okay, so let's make sure that we got that to work. Let's just go up and close Workbench. And now we're going to go down and we're going to open it again. Very good. All right. So we could go ahead and use the Workbench a little bit, but we don't really have anything to do with it yet because we don't have any of the files from our textbook. And by textbook, I'm talking about the MySQL second edition by Joel Murach. So let's close our copy of Workbench and we'll close our Finder for Applications. And let's go to a new website with the browser, www.murach.com. In this case, is to the publisher website. And more recently here, this is a responsive web page design. And when we have it a little on the narrow side, it doesn't show us the link that we need. So we can either fool around with this mobile-oriented navigation icon, or we can just pull it out a little bit wider and we're going to get our navigation bar. Okay, that looks good. And so we want to shop books. Okay. And oh yeah, we just want to hover over shop books and then pick database programming books. So there's a couple of ways to navigate there. I'm sure you'll find your way. And the book that we want is the middle one, Murach's MySQL second edition. So let's give that a click. And now we go to a site where we would be able to purchase the book. I hope you've already purchased yours. And we want to download the file, so we want to go to the tab for free downloads down here. And what we're going to find out is that while the downloads are free, we need to identify ourselves because they want to be able to keep in touch with us. And these are pretty good guys. They've had my email address for a very long time, and they certainly don't bother me. And I'm happy to find out when they have a new edition coming out for one of their books. So the file that we want is this one down at the bottom, zip file for any system, because we're putting this on a Mac, not on Windows. So we're going to click the download now for any system. And instead of doing the download, it says, oh, I want you to register. So I'm going to register. I've already done this a few times today. I was doing my practicing for this. And I'm going to use my iSchool at Illinois email address, because that's the course I'm teaching most immediately. And I don't mind them sending me stuff. They don't seem to abuse it. And now I have to do the CAPTCHA thing. So I'm going to click claim to not be a robot and click according to the instructions there and try to verify that I'm not a robot. Looks like they agree with me. And now I'm going to click on register. So you would think that if we did that, we would be in great shape. We could just either we would go right to the download, or we'd have to click one button and we'd go to the download. And unfortunately, I've got to say that their design is not as appealing as that. So we do get a button, continue to download. So we'll click that. And what it does is it puts us back on the page for the book again. And to do the download, we need to navigate down. We need to find the tab for free downloads. We need to navigate down a bit again. We need to find the place to download the zip file for any system. And this time, when we click on the Download Now button, it's really going to do it. Believe me, here it comes. So I click on that, and you can see the animation if you were watching that I got the zip file. So let us, I'll just minimize the browser for now. Let's open a Finder and go to Downloads. And here we are. Here's the file that has all. It's a zip file with all the textbook files. And so we're going to double click on it to unzip it. And that's our directory. And I want to put that over into Documents. Okay, so let's try to be fancy. Let's just pull that over on top of Documents and let go. And now we'll click on Documents, and there it is. MySQL. So my students who are using a Mac will find their files from the textbook here. I want you to put them immediately under Documents. My students who are using Windows, I have them put them at the top of the C drive. Okay, and those are kind of equivalent spots, not completely equivalent spots, but this is a real convenient spot to have your files. And let's just take a peek at what's in here. There are scripts from the book. So every example that's in the Murach book, there's a script for it. You can find it by chapter and run it. Okay. There are DB setup scripts, the most important of which is called create databases.sql. That's what we're going to run to create the databases we're going to use with the book. There are diagrams to use with the diagrammer, which is a part of Workbench. There are solutions to all the exercises at the end of the chapter. So because of that, the good part of that is that you can go to any chapter in the text. You can find a one of the exercises, like this one here. You can find for chapter 3. We have a whole bunch of these. You can try it yourself, and then you can look at the answer from the author, which is pretty good. Okay. Now that means that I can't assign these as your assignments, and in fact, for instructors, the author makes available another set of files, and another set of exercises that's a parallel to these. And it's based on a case called My Guitar Shop. So I'm going to be giving you assignments in the My Guitar Shop exercises, which track pretty closely to the set that's printed at the end of the chapters. And I'm not going to be publishing the solutions to those until you've already handed in your work. So that's our way around the files that came with the book. All right, so let's see if we can use those. I'm going to close this copy of Finder, and I'm going to go down and fire up Workbench again. And when we come into Workbench in Chapter 2, we're really gonna be learning our way around Workbench. So I'm not going to do a full tutorial on Workbench here, but just going to show you the skills that you need to get this done. So but what we have here is a connection that will connect to a server, and it's going to connect to a local instance 3306, and that is the instance of the MySQL community server that's configured on port 3306 on our local machine. And heck, that's the one that we just installed. So we have a pre-configured connection. So let's just left click on it once, and it's going to open up. And the way that we did the install, we don't have any password on the database server, so we don't need to put a password in here to connect. And whereas I don't think that that's a good practice in deploying this software on a real server because it's insecure, in terms of deploying this on your developer machine, in my case it's on my laptop, it's really being protected by the password for my laptop. Okay, so it's a single user machine, and we are depending upon the operating system's security to secure our little developer copy of the server. Okay, so here we are. What we need to do is we need to run the SQL script that will set up the databases. So let's go up to this upper toolbar. Okay, and the second from the left is a little icon that has SQL and a little open folder on it. Let's click on that, and it gives us some opportunities. And the high-level directory one is MySQL, so we're going to open that. And then the next one is DB setup. And then the master script here is called create databases.sql. In fact, it calls these other scripts to get all the databases installed. We installed 3 databases, one called AP, one called EX, one called OM. So let's just select create databases and click on open. And what you're going to see here is you're going to see in the editor window that's in the middle, you're going to see our script. And our script's pretty big. Okay, even this just high-level script is 1,135 lines long. Okay, so quite a bit of code. Okay, so how do you run a script? Well, you click on this lower toolbar. This is a toolbar associated with the script editor panel. Okay, you click on one of the lightning bolt icons. Okay, and the one that I prefer, the one that works the best, is the left one, the one without the little I-beam. Okay, so we're just going to click on that, and we're going to wait for our script to run, and hopefully it will. My. It doesn't seem to be running. All right, we're going to take a pause here, and I'm going to fix it. I'll be right back. Okay, so I've recovered here. Now, this is a good example of what it's like to work with these MySQL tools. The good news is that they're free. The bad news is that they're free. Okay, this is an open source product. You typically have some bugs in any release, and sometimes, especially in Workbench, you'll have this thing stop working on you. So here's what I did. I went and I said, well, I've just got this. I just had this icon turning, and it didn't appear to really be running my script. So I said, geez, can I stop Workbench? And I came up here and I went to click on the little jewel red X, and it looked like it was going to work fine. If that hadn't worked, well, then I would have had to force quit it. Okay, so here I can click on this red X, but let's say I can also go up to the apple in the toolbar and say I want to force quit, and it automatically is going to go to MySQL Workbench, and I'm going to force quit it. Okay, and that pretty well got rid of all that. And then I just came right back in again and said, okay, let's get started again. So I left clicked on the connection, and here's my typically the tabs that you haven't closed in the editor are going to open up again. Okay, but let's say this hadn't opened up. Let's say we just came back to a blank query one. Well, we just have to go back to the upper toolbar, click on the second icon, the one that has the open folder, navigate our way back and pick the create databases.sql file. And here again, we're ready to run it, and we just want to go up to the left lightning bolt icon, the one without the I-beam, and click on it. Oh, I'll tell you, isn't that fun? Isn't that fun? So that one's not going to work either, huh? Well, there is a theory about what works and what doesn't work. And this is consistent with the theory that's been hanging around. So let's close this. And nope, going to have to force close this. Sorry about that. We're going to force quit this. All right. And there is a theory that the first connection that you open, so let's go back again. Let's go back to the Workbench. Let's open a connection. Okay. There is a theory that if somebody has on the internet that the first connection that you get doesn't really work that well, and that if you have a connection up and then you create a second one, that the second one will work just fine. Well, whether it's just try again or whether they're actually right about that, I don't know. How would you get a second connection up? Well, I'd go to this little house for home, And I can create a second connection by giving it a left click. And as you can see, there are two tabs up here that are connections to the same server. And now let's try to open that create databases.sql file. I double clicked that. That's how I got it to open. And now I'm going to run the left lightning bolt again. And this time it ran. If you look down at the bottom, it ran okay. Okay, so if you're having a balky time with this is not a perfect product, but it's a free product. And with a little patience, you can make it work. If it starts to misbehave, and your copy of Workbench should lock up, remember, force quit it, okay? And then if you just can't get it to work the next time up, try opening a second connection, right? And see if you can make that work. So we've created the databases. Let's take a look at what that did. Over here in the left part, okay, the left part is kind of a navigator panel. We can see that there's a section for schemas. Now in MySQL, each of our databases is a schema. So we just added 3 databases. We should see, in addition to this test, which we've had all along since we installed the product, we should be seeing AP, EX, and OM, and they're not there. Well, just go up to this schema line, and there's a refresh icon. So click that little swirly refresh icon, and we can see, oh, AP, EX, OM. Oh, that's great. So let's open up the schema for AP, and then let's look at the list of tables that we have. And it turns out that this is an accounts payable database, and this is the application where people who sell things to our organization send really extend us credit. So they send us their goods and services, and they send us invoices, and then we pay them like in 30 days. And the accounts payable application is the application where we track them to make sure that we pay them. And sometimes we don't pay them too fast, or definitely don't pay them too slow, so that our vendors are going to cut us off. So the invoices in the AP databases are other people's invoices to our organization. They're things we owe, as compared with invoices that we would send to other organizations who are our customers. That would be called accounts receivable. So accounts payable, if we look at the invoices, let's hover over the invoices table and go all the way to the right. There are 3 icons to the right. The one all the way on the right, which is kind of a grid, is going to show us the data that's in that table. So we're going to see, I think there are 114 invoices in here. Yeah, there are. Been using this for quite a while. And those are some of the data that we're going to use as we go through the chapters. So we will be having a bit of a session where we go through the features of Workbench in more detail. But this abbreviated one is just to show that we can get it in, as bulky as it is from time to time, we can get it to work, and that we can get the data installed that we need to have installed. So that's it. You're all done. Typically what I do is when I get to the end of a session, I come over here and I click on this Query 1 tab, which in the Mac version of the software will not close. And I right click and I say Close Other Tabs. Ooh, and it closed the whole thing. Well, it's not working as well as I would like it to be working, but I think that's as good a combination as we're going to get. So I apologize for that. That's the best combination that I have so far. and we're going to do our best to get through the semester with it. Those of us who are on the Mac, and anybody who finds another combination of these software versions that's a little less balking than the combination that you just saw, please let me know, and we'll do our best. Thank you very much. I'm going to say bye until next time. Bye-bye.